I'll look at you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
We're rolling. Okay, great. Can you tell us who you are and what practice you work with?
Sure. My name's Lisa Warren. I'm CEO at Andrews Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center in Birmingham, Alabama.
Awesome. Way to go. I don't have to ask that one twice. You did great. So tell me about the experience of working with White Plume. Thinking about the implementation for Go Live, how the support has been, and is that something that White Plume's kind of one of those, you talk to the sales rep and then you never hear from them again?
No, it's been amazing working with White Plume. We were really apprehensive. We had the old-fashioned paper charge tickets, and moving from paper to electronic is always a challenge. We were apprehensive, our staff was apprehensive, but the planning process was very thorough. I felt very well prepared before implementation. When the day came, we were well trained. We had wonderful support on site. I would definitely recommend paying for the support on site. I think we got our money's worth there, and the implementation went relatively smoothly.
Perfect. When you think about, think back to that experience about what it was like beforehand, and you see some of the, would you say they're productivity improvements, or their coding accuracy improvements, the improvements of going from paper to electronic, what does that look like?
So first of all, the logistics are extremely easy, or much easier than they were. So we would see almost 300 to 350 patients a day in our main office, and if you could imagine bundling up 350 pieces of paper to send over to the business office to key, something always got lost, something always stuck to the back of something else, and so we frequently had issues with missing charge tickets. And so the time it took to track down just the pieces of paper that had charges on them, we've saved a tremendous amount of time there. I think our coding accuracy has improved as far as selecting with ICD-10, selecting the correct ICD-10 code. White Plume has helped with that as well. From a coding accuracy standpoint, I actually have certified coders that review the note and what's marked in the ticket, and I'm not sure that my clinicians are any better marking paper than they were marking computers. But perhaps the ICD-10's better, but it's a lot easier for my coders to look at a computer screen than tracking down paper.
Right. One of the things that we hear a lot of times from orthopedic practices is, don't turn my doctors into coders.
Right.
Right. And we want to make the coders, who are an expensive back office team, more productive. Have you seen any productivity or time savings from your coders?
I think using some of the rules has helped the coders. The bundling edits and some things like that has made their life a little bit easier. They can look it up real time rather than stopping and looking it up in a book, because we have the edits in place. I think, again, the tracking piece of it, where we can look for missing tickets, we can know if someone canceled rather than chasing pieces of paper, has made them a lot more efficient.
Sure, sure. Go back to, you were talking about the experience of implementation of Go Live. What was your experience of, well, here's what they told me during the sales process, and here's what actually happened?
I think it was fairly well presented. I don't know that there were any surprises in the process of implementation. There really weren't.
Yeah, so when you think about White Plume, do you think that is something that, do we do a good job of saying what we're going to do and then actually delivering on that?
I think you definitely say what you're going to do, and you do it, and sometimes even over-deliver. I have some special high-maintenance staff, and the support team has been very patient working with them, both on implementation and even post-implementation. For calls with questions or anything, I felt like White Plume's been very accessible.
Awesome, thank you. When we think about, one of the things that I've heard in a couple of these other interviews is talking about, nobody wants just another piece of software.
Right.
I've got software coming out of my ears, but what I really want is the outcome. Can you talk about how does White Plume help deliver the outcome that you want?
I think back to efficiency, so not chasing paper, I think has been very nice. The immediacy of tracking whether something is missing or not through the missing ticket reports and things like that has been very helpful. The rules have been helpful, again, from a coding perspective and getting things through quickly. I think the clinicians have been able to, again, look up codes in a more accurate way than perhaps if they were trying to use a book or something else.
Okay, okay. And you said you were skeptical at the beginning when you kind of first looking at this. If you were talking to like a peer in your position who's also skeptical, and they said, hey, give me some advice, I'm talking to these White Plume people, what would you say?
I think the biggest thing is to prepare your staff.
Yep.
and understand your processes pretty thoroughly. I think that's one of the other things prior to implementation is you need to have a very good understanding of how you do things now and communicate that very clearly to White Plume so that way they can either most accurately mirror what you're doing or, very clearly up front what you're not going to do anymore.
Right.
And how this process is going to be different than than you've already done.
Yeah, kind of when you look at your process and when White Plume tries to come in and help with that, were there any places where you saw some value add from White Plume making some recommendations about what we've seen at other practices?
Oh, no doubt. I think your experience in multiple orthopedic practices, even within using the same software that we use, you knew what the interface problems were. If there was a problem, it was fixed relatively quickly. So I think that helped. I think one of the things that was entertaining is during implementation, while we had the support team with various pods or various physicians, is how little we did things consistently.
Oh.
Like, the support person would say, well, did you know this pod does it this way and this pod does it that way? And I had no idea. So I think they offered some off-the-cuff consulting as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, it's one of the things that we kind of learn sometimes when you're going into that process.
Right.
We learn things along the way that we didn't expect.
Right.
And one of the things that we try to do with our CAE team and with our clients is look at analytics on a quarterly basis. Now, I know that's something that we review with your team. We're trying to identify trends. We're trying to identify where there may be opportunities for improvement. And we talked in there a little bit about the value of analytics. When you look at that and think about a data-driven process for the team that works for you, how does that kind of shape your future vision of what this coding process looks like?
I think what we need to think about the analytics is that we make sure it doesn't seem like a punitive process with the staff and that we can use the analytics as tools to make them more efficient so they don't need to be afraid of them.
Sure. That's a great point. Let me ask that again because I really like the way that you said that. When you think about analytics for the team, not punitive, and forward-looking, what are the types of opportunities you want to find there?
Right. What do I want to find?
Yeah, what do you,
Oh.
what would you, if you look out into 2020 and beyond, and we're looking at analytics, we're going to be looking for additional opportunities for coding automation or coding productivity, and that's what White Plume's going to want to look for. But what does Lisa want to look for?
I think that coding an office visit or any of the other things is relatively simple. The difficulty is the rules. So what I'd really like to see is some very payer-specific rules that we can set up, that this payer likes this code with this diagnosis, this payer likes that code with that diagnosis, and often it's not the same. It may be the same diagnosis, it may be two different codes, it may be one code, two different diagnoses, very payer-specific, because I think that it's becoming more and more complex what one commercial payer will pay for versus another.
Yeah, that's great. We talked about the old paper-based process, and we've got some good data on productivity of what that looks like. And you guys, where you are on that right now, are about 11 times more productive than the old school process on paper. How much or what part of that 11 times the national average would you attribute to what we've done with White Plume?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Talk about when there have been integrations with other EHRs or other PMs or other software platforms. How does White Plume stack up as far as ease to work with or willingness to work with other people?
Well, I think White Plume's willingness is unparalleled. Usually the answer is yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we'll try to do it. Often the issue's on the other side and trying to get it done. But White Plume has always been great about willing to try something new or integrate something they've done before and offer suggestions. So it has been one of the best vendors I've worked with as far as helpfulness and willingness to try to get it done right.
When I think about, that's perfect, thank you. When I think about what would life today at Andrews look like if White Plume weren't there, what would that look like?
Oh my gosh, I can't even get my head around. Now we're up to almost 380 patients a day. I have 24 physicians. I cannot even comprehend. We have 6 locations. I can't even comprehend what it would look like trying to keep track of paper.
when I think about, what about the charge entry process?
Right, and so it took us a while to move to the automated charge entry, but that is correct. We see almost 78,000 patient visits a year. So the thought of some poor person hand keying 78,000 visits is just incomprehensible.
Right, and that, yeah, I think that's where the kind of the 11x difference would be.
Right.
I think that'd be a staffing,
Right.
issue. That's kind of one of the reasons why we look at that from an analytics perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else am I not asking that you'd want to say about White Plume?
I think, again, the support, the attitude of the people we talk to, the work ethic has been great. White Plume's been a wonderful vendor to work with.
Yeah, and we've been proud to work with Andrews.
Great.
So thank you.
Great.
Catherine, anything I missed?
No, I think do you want something DMA specific, or do you?
Yeah, I didn't really talk about motion
Okay,
MD.
yeah, sure. That's a great
Okay.
idea. Thank you.
So if we're not supposed to use a vendor name,
I mean, you're welcome to use a vendor name if you'd like. I just didn't want to put that on the spot.
okay.
But if you want to say, we could think about your DME, what were some of the struggles on that side?
I can say, I'll start with a very specific example of how White Plume has come through and worked with a new vendor is we just recently implemented a new DME software. And the software is great from an inventory management standpoint, we can keep real time, but our goal was not only can we mark it as used in inventory, I wanted to mark it on a charge ticket and I wanted to keep track so we can bill it. So this is the best case scenario, that inventory is debited and charges are credited. And so that's what we were looking for. And White Plume did a great job working with this software. It was a relatively new software for the vendor, and so there were some struggles with getting their software together and White Plume kind of teaching them what they needed to be fed, but it's ultimately worked out great, and I think probably our DME capture rate's a lot better.
And they never would have done it without Lisa.
They
Warren.
would have never done it if I hadn't demanded it.
You did awesome.
Okay.
You've got a future in TV.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
ever
yeah.
decide
yeah.
you want to.